protest and growing national outcries continue over the death of George Floyd.
Last night, people protesting in Minneapolis escalated as demonstrators were lashed by tear gas and rubber bullets.
The main message here is that they want to see those officers involved.
They want to see those officers arrested.
Officers arrested.
How do you feel about the recent news of Tyrese Nicholas case?
I feel betrayed because police officers are meant to be here to protect you, but they are using their power to beat on civilians, and I don't feel safe. That's how I feel. Well, whenever I'm driving or whenever I'm out walking around cops, I tend to be more careful because it's not just racist police officers. Now it's just the whole police department as a whole.
In your opinion, what is the purpose of law enforcement?
Should be to keep our community safe. Enforce the rules, but the rules is, keep people safe and just help society function better. So there's a difference between the kind of the purpose and how it really works, but let's talk more about that.
How has your parent taught you to respond when engaged by law enforcement?
We do as told, my dad told me to, whenever I first got my license, if it's at night, to, turn the car light on the inside so they can see. He said, go ahead and grab your license and insurance and just kind of have it up in your hand like that. But it was a pretty quick conversation. It wasn't something we spent a lot of time on, to be honest.
To a friend, when 4 police officers ran up on him and threw him and 3 others on the ground, handcuffed them and then pushed them up against a wall, all the while asking them, what drugs do you have? What drugs do you have? Kenny had no drugs. He told the officers this many times, but each statement of no drugs only seemed to provoke more force and make the officers more upset. As Kenny sat cuffed and slumped against a brick wall, he quietly told the officers that he was a student at Temple University, and without reason, they could not hold him. The officers finally retrieved his college ID, which was in his wallet that had slipped out when he was slammed to the pavement, realized that he was indeed in college without drugs, and then let him go.
What do you think the recent election means for race relations in the United States?
I don't know if the election changes a lot about race relations. I mean, on the one, I guess in recent years, we do have it's the most diverse Congress that we've ever had, at least if you look at the House. And I do, just from a point of significance, in Georgia having 2 African-American Senate candidates in the same race.
The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act is about liberty and justice for all.
A profession where you have the power to kill should be a profession that requires highly trained officers who are accountable to the public. That is what this bill accomplishes.
This legislation will not erase centuries of systemic racism and excessive policing in America. It will not bring back George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, say her name, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, or the countless other men and women who died or were senselessly injured. But it will take a tremendous step toward to stop the violence, stem the suffering, and start to build a healthier, better relationship between law enforcement and communities that they respect.
When I was a kid, actually I remember a field trip that I went on once. Might have been Fernbank, something like that. And I remember, get off the bus, we're on a little single file line, we're going into the museum, and I remember another class of students in a single file line kind of walking the opposite direction of us, and they were all black, and that just, so no one ever taught us directly things like race and really about society, but I remember like a thing in my head, like, okay, all of those students look different than all of us, and we're all together and they're all together, and it wasn't a good or a bad, or it was no dislike. It was just they go to school together and we go to school together, which sounds like something out of the 1950s or something, but this was 1992 or something. So if that makes sense.
What are your thoughts on the government and social media influence on the discussion of racism?
Well, I think I'm going to be honest with you. This is the one I'm having the hardest time thinking of an answer to. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of discussions around race need to be. I think social media and if you say the government officials can help in some ways maybe help foster those things, but I think people just need experiences with people that are different than them. Like, I think one of the legacies of segregation is, and in other ways where segregation is kind of preserved, even with official segregation being banned, there's other methods of kind of keeping people separate. And so you don't, if you, like me, like if you grow up around, in a social bubble, it is easier for those stereotypes or ideas to fester because you don't have personal connections to people from different communities. And so I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I do wonder about like the government's ability to foster that. When Barack Obama gets elected, people are having conversations about a post-racial society. And if you look back in hindsight now, it feels very naive. And that felt like in the government, one of the most significant things that could happen. Social media, I don't know.
So what can we do as a community to push for the changes that are necessary for police departments across this country? I would say that we have one of the most powerful weapons collectively, and that is our vote. We have the power to expect and demand from our leadership the changes that are necessary. The mayor hires and fires police chiefs. The police chief sets the culture and the climate in the police department. City Council negotiates the contract with the FOP. And our state and federal legislators have the power and the ability to introduce legislation that would force police departments across this country to change their policies. So what am I asking you to do? There are a couple of things that I have been pushing for, and I would hope